What if I told you that one of the most famous rock stars in history wasn't supposed to make it past his 20s? This is a man who bit the head off of a bat. He got fired from his own band, and he nearly drank himself to death. But somehow, he became more famous because of these things. This isn't a story about just music. This is a story about identity, addiction, survival, and why some people collapse under chaos while others become it. And that's really where Ozzy's story starts. Because from the beginning, before all of that, before the chaos and the headlines and everything people think they know, he was just a kid from Birmingham trying to figure out where he fit. And the truth is, he didn't fit in anywhere. And I think that's where a lot of people are going to connect with this, whether they realize it right away or maybe it takes a little bit. Because not fitting in early does something to a person. It changes how a person sees themselves. And it changes what you think is possible for your own life. Ozzy struggled in school. Reading just didn't come easy for him. Focus didn't come easy at all either. And when that happens, especially back then, nobody is going to be sitting down trying to understand you. Nope. They're just labeling you, and you're the problem. And after a while, you start to believe that. So he drifts. He moves from job to job. Nothing sticks. Nothing feels right. He worked in a slaughterhouse. He had worked construction, whatever he can get. But there's no direction behind it. None at all. Zero. It's all just movement without purpose. And eventually, that drift turns into bad decisions. Ozzy ends up breaking into a shop. He gets caught and ends up sitting in a jail cell. And that moment matters more than people think. Because it's not just about being in trouble. It's about sitting there with nothing but your thoughts. I don't know if anybody's had the privilege of sitting in a jail cell like that. But it's tough. It's definitely a point of reflection for sure. You sit there with nothing but your thoughts and you realize that you don't have a path. There's no path anywhere. Nothing positive. And if nothing changes, well, that jail cell is probably where you're going to be ending up long term. And for a lot of people, that's where the story locks in. But for Ozzy, something else shows up. Something else comes into his life. And that's music. It didn't come in as a plan or even a career. It was just something that finally makes sense to him. And when he connects with Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward, it's not polished at all. It's not calculated. It's just real. They're pulling from where they came from, their environment, the pressure, that darkness. And that's what makes Black Sabbath different. Because they took a different approach. They weren't trying to impress people. They were expressing something. And when you listen to songs like War Pigs, you can feel that tension, right? That anger. It's not just music. It's atmosphere. It's them. It's what they know. And then Paranoid hits in a completely different way. It's faster. It's sharper. Almost like an anxious just energy. Gets you going. Iron Man feels heavy, slow, almost mechanical. And then there's Ozzy's voice. It sits right in the middle of all of it. And, it might not be perfect, but it's real. And that is why it works. And then everything changes because success hits. It hits and it comes on fast. And this is where things really start to get complicated. Because people love talking about success, but they never talk about what comes with it. Things like the pressure. Things like having major expectations. Not only for yourself, but the expectations placed on you. The idea that you have to show up and be that version of yourself every single night, whether you feel like it or not. And if you don't have a foundation underneath you, that kind of pressure finds a way in. And for Ozzy, that's where addiction starts to take hold. And again, not chaotic at first, but more as relief. It brings him relief. And I want to sit on that for just a second, because this is where people either lean in or where they pull away. Addiction doesn't usually start because someone wants to destroy their life. Nobody wakes up and says, hey, things are going really good. I think I'm going to start using heroin and mess my life up. It starts because something finally makes that noise stop. It brings relief. Something to take that edge off. Something makes you feel like you can breathe for a minute. And who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want that relief of the chaos? And wow, I can finally breathe just for a minute. And when you spend most of your life feeling like you don't fit, that feeling is powerful. That feeling of, I can breathe. And that's how it hooks you. Not all at once. It happens gradually. Until one day, you're not choosing it anymore. You need it. And Ozzy goes deep into that. The story people laugh about, the bat, the dove, all of it. Underneath all of that is someone who is losing control. And eventually, it catches up to him. He gets fired from Black Sabbath. And that's not just him losing a job. That's losing identity. He lost his identity when he lost Black Sabbath. And I'll say this too, because this part matters. If you're listening to this and you know you're dealing with something, whether it's alcohol, substances, or even feeling like you can't shut your mind off, you're not the only one in that, I promise you. And more importantly, you don't have to stay stuck in it. Talk to someone. Reach out. It could be a friend, a family member, or even a professional. There are real ways out of it. And sometimes it starts with something as simple as just being honest with yourself about where you're at. But back to the story, because this is where the story really flips. Because when Ozzy makes a comeback, he doesn't come back alone. He comes back with Randy Rhoads. And Randy wasn't just a guitarist. He was one of the most technically skilled and creative players of his time. The man was classically trained, very precise, very controlled. And when you pair that with Ozzy's chaos, man, you get something really rare. Because Ozzy is chaos, and Randy is controlled. And together, they create something that still holds up to this day, decades later. You listen to Crazy Train, and yeah, it's a hit. Instant recognizability. But that guitar solo, that's one of those moments in music where everything just clicks. It's got energy, precision, timing. It doesn't just sound good. It feels right. I love it. And a lot of people would argue that Randy Rhoads' solo sits among the greatest ever recorded. But then you hear Mr. Crowley, and it's a completely different experience. It has the buildup, the atmosphere, and then that solo and that song just takes over. And again, it's balance, chaos, but supported by structure. And then it's gone. Randy Rhoads dies in a plane crash. And this really hits differently because this isn't chaos. This is loss. And it really shook Ozzy very hard because now it's not just about surviving himself. It's about losing someone who helped hold everything together. And this is where addiction gets even more real. Because when pain enters the picture, the temptation to escape gets much, much stronger. And Ozzy goes through that. There's relapses. There's setbacks. Because addiction isn't a straight line. Nope. It's a dogfight. It's an everyday dogfight. They say in addiction that the rent's due every day. You gotta pay the rent every single day. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people today are dealing with some version of that same struggle Ozzy went through. It might not look like Ozzy's, but it's there. You see, we've normalized escape, constant distraction, constant stimulation, anything to avoid sitting with what's actually going on underneath us. And then we wonder why people feel stuck. You see, Ozzy's story is just louder because he's famous. But the pattern in his story is the same as everybody else's who deals with that. But then something happens that nobody expected. The Osbournes, the television show. And suddenly everything shifts once again because now people are seeing the rock legend. They're seeing the person. It's no longer just seeing Ozzy the artist. They're seeing Ozzy the person. And he's funny. He's confused. He's human. And that changes everything. And when you step back and look at everything, the music, the addiction, the loss, the comebacks, this is what stands out. Ozzy Osbourne should have not made it at all. But he did. And he didn't make it because everything got fixed. He made it because he didn't stop. So the real question, my friends, is this. Are you waiting until everything in your life is perfectly put together? Or are you willing to move forward anyway? And before we close this out, I want to say this clearly. If you're struggling with dependency, addiction, or your mental health, there are real resources available. In the United States, you can call or text 988. That's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or visit 988lifeline.org. You can also reach the SAMHSA National Helpline at 1-800-662-4357. And that's for substance abuse support. You're not alone in this, even if it feels like it. You're not alone, I promise you. And reaching out is not weakness. It's where things really start to change. Trust me on this. I have firsthand experience. If this made you think differently, Just take a second. Because history isn't just something that happened. It's something that's happening. And it's happening through people right now. If you want deeper discussions and conversations like this, maybe more breakdowns, reading lists, and real discussions, join us inside Historical Academy and School. Everything we talk about is grounded in real accounts, documentation, and lived experience. I want to thank you for the sacred honor of your time. Spend your time wisely because it's the most precious commodity you have. It's the one thing we can never get back. So thank you for spending your time with me. My name is Jonathan. I go by Historical, and I'm the creator of Historical Media. And I tell history stories that refuse to be forgotten.